Most clothing companies try to predict what customers will want months before garments reach a store. Zara built its advantage by shortening that distance. Instead of treating demand forecasting as the central intelligence of fashion, Amancio Ortega's business treated the store as a source of evidence. The crucial question was not simply how cheaply clothing could be produced, but how quickly uncertainty could be converted into a decision. Ortega's early experience in garment manufacturing shaped that approach. Before Zara became internationally recognized, he worked through Confecciones Goa, a business connected to the production and distribution of clothing. The significance of this period was operational rather than glamorous. It exposed him to the practical friction between what factories made, what retailers displayed, and what customers actually chose to buy. That friction created a founding challenge. Traditional apparel systems often depended on long planning cycles, large production commitments, and seasonal predictions. A wrong forecast could leave a retailer with excess stock that required discounting. A successful forecast could still be weakened by delays because fashion demand changes while products are moving through the supply chain. Ortega's emerging model addressed the risk by making smaller commitments earlier. In 1975, the first Zara store opened in A Coruña, Spain. The store was not merely a point of sale, it became part of a feedback system linking customers, store personnel, designers, manufacturing, and logistics. The physical location mattered because it brought the company into direct contact with purchasing behavior. Every decision about color, fit, style, and quantity could be tested against actual demand rather than remaining only a planning assumption. The early product strategy relied on short production runs. That phrase describes more than limited quantities. It means the company could place a smaller bet, observe the response, and decide whether to repeat, modify, or abandon the item. Short runs reduced the cost of being wrong, although they also increased the need for disciplined coordination. The model exchanged some scale efficiency for information and flexibility. Customer feedback entered the system through ordinary retail interaction. Store managers and employees could identify what shoppers requested, which garments attracted attention, what sizes were missing, and which products were ignored. Those observations were not equivalent to a scientific survey. They could be incomplete or subjective. Their value came from being frequent, immediate, and connected to decisions that could affect the next production cycle. That created a distinctive managerial problem. Information is useful only when an organization can interpret it and act before it becomes obsolete. Zara, therefore, needed close communication among commercial teams, designers, production planners, and distribution operations. The feedback loop was not a single technology or a heroic insight. It was a coordination capability, built through repeated routines and a willingness to let market signals alter planned activity. Speed in this context was not merely a promise of rapid delivery. It was a method for reducing forecasting risk. If demand could be observed later, production decisions could be made with better evidence. If the company could then respond quickly, it did not need to commit every seasonal choice far in advance. The strategic advantage came from compressing time between information and action. This model also changed the meaning of inventory. Inventory is often described as a financial burden because unsold merchandise ties up capital and eventually demands markdowns. Zara's limited initial quantities reduced exposure to that problem, but they also created a different risk. A popular item might disappear before more could be made. The business accepted that tension. It prioritized responsiveness over the promise of permanent availability. For customers, scarcity could influence behavior. But the more important business effect was analytical. When merchandise moved through stores frequently, each visit could reveal something new about demand. Store traffic became part of the operating system. Yet this was not a guarantee of success. The model depended on enough customers entering stores, enough employees reporting accurately, and enough production capacity remaining flexible. Inditex, the group that grew around Zara, gave the model a broader organizational structure. Its role was not simply to own a successful brand. It connected retail operations with manufacturing, logistics, and commercial decision-making. That integration helped the company shorten the distance between a market signal and a physical product. The advantage was systemic, meaning it emerged from several linked activities rather than one isolated innovation. Nearby manufacturing played an important role in that system, particularly when compared with the longest and most distant production arrangements in global apparel. Proximity could support faster communication, shorter transport links, and greater flexibility for selected products. It did not eliminate complexity or make every garment local. Rather, it gave the company options when speed and adjustment mattered more than the lowest possible unit cost. The trade-off was substantial. A decentralized world of suppliers can pursue lower production costs, while a more responsive network demands careful scheduling, quality control, and logistics. Zara's model required the company to manage many moving parts without allowing feedback to become noise. A request from one store did not automatically represent a universal trend. the organization had to distinguish local preference from broader demand. That distinction reveals why the model cannot be reduced to copying fashion trends quickly. The deeper capability was selective interpretation. Designers and commercial teams had to combine customer observations with professional judgment, existing product knowledge, and evidence from sales. Feedback generated possibilities. It did not dictate every answer. The company's advantage depended on deciding which signals deserved a response. As Zara expanded beyond A Coruña, the original feedback logic faced a scaling hurdle. A small network can communicate informally. An international retailer cannot rely on personal memory or occasional conversations. It needs standardized reporting, dependable logistics, and clear authority over what happens next. Expansion therefore threatened the very responsiveness that had made the original model effective. More stores created more information, but also more noise. The leadership challenge was to preserve speed without allowing the organization to become chaotic. Ortega became known for emphasizing the operational environment around retail rather than cultivating a highly public personal profile. However, specific internal decisions should not be attributed to personal preference without documentation. What can be observed is that Inditex continued building a business architecture in which stores, production, and distribution were tightly connected. Competitors could imitate individual features of the model. They could shorten design cycles, increase store deliveries, or use customer data more aggressively. But imitation did not automatically reproduce the entire system. The difficult asset was organizational alignment. A fast design decision is worthless if production cannot adjust. A flexible factory has limited value if distribution is slow. A store report matters only when someone has the authority and capacity to respond. This is where Zara's competitive position became more nuanced. Its speed was both a market promise and a defensive mechanism. Frequent newness could distinguish the stores from retailers built around long seasonal collections. Short runs could limit the consequences of weak demand. Integrated operations could make the company less dependent on perfect predictions. None of these advantages removed competition. Together, they changed the basis on which competition occurred. The model also exposed Zara to structural dependence. Its performance relied on continuous store traffic and on customers remaining interested in frequent changes. It required a supply chain capable of maintaining rhythm across different markets. If traffic weakened, the feedback signal became less abundant. If logistics failed, the value of rapid production diminished. A system optimized for responsiveness could become vulnerable when the surrounding conditions changed. The broader apparel industry introduced another complication. Cost and speed are not the only measures of efficiency. Fast fashion has attracted growing scrutiny over resource use, waste, labor conditions, and the environmental consequences of producing and discarding clothing at high frequency. Zara's system may reduce certain forms of forecasting error and excess inventory, but that does not settle the larger question of total environmental impact. This tension should prevent a simplistic reading of the case. Customer feedback can improve commercial decisions, yet better matching of supply and demand does not automatically make consumption sustainable. A company may become more precise while participating in a market that encourages more frequent purchasing. Operational efficiency and social or environmental responsibility can overlap in some areas, but they are not interchangeable objectives. There is also a limit to treating customers as sensors. Retail behavior is shaped by price, store presentation, cultural context, and the alternatives available in a particular market. Feedback can show what happened, but it may not fully explain why it happened. A sophisticated organization therefore needs interpretation, not just data collection. Zara's system worked through a combination of observation, judgment, manufacturing flexibility, and distribution discipline. The most important lesson is that Zara did not simply build a faster fashion company. It built a business model around postponing commitment until better information became available. Short production runs, frequent store deliveries, nearby manufacturing for selected needs, and centralized coordination formed a practical response to uncertainty. The company's speed was valuable because it connected evidence to action and reduced the cost of an incorrect forecast. That lesson extends beyond clothing, but it should not be copied mechanically. Every industry has different demand cycles, production constraints, and customer signals. What Zara demonstrates is a principle of strategic design. Advantage can come from organizing the business around the most expensive uncertainty. For apparel, that uncertainty was often what customers would want, in which quantities, and for how long. Amancio Ortega's contribution was therefore less about predicting fashion perfectly than about redesigning the consequences of being wrong. The first Zara store in A Coruña in 1975 became the beginning of an operating logic that Inditex developed at much greater scale. Its lasting significance lies in the connection between customer feedback and industrial execution, where stores functioned as market sensors and speed became a form of inventory control. Zara's history ultimately presents a disciplined paradox. The company reduced reliance on distant forecasts by creating a more complex system of observation, production, and distribution. It gained flexibility, but accepted operational demands. It responded to customers more rapidly, while entering a sector increasingly questioned for its environmental effects. The enduring business insight is not that speed guarantees success. It is that the right speed, applied to the right uncertainty, can redefine how a company competes.